At New York Comic Con, Tom Brevoort hit the stage to reveal his next big X-Men era, Shadows of Tomorrow, 8 new comics. And if X-Men from the Ashes taught us anything, it's that Brevoort can always make things worse. So what's his big fix? Bring in some new blood to save the X-Men? Kinda, sorta. Tim Seeley's coming to the line. And yes, he's an upgrade over Alyssa Wong, but he's not the game changer that they needed. Because here's the truth. Most of the creators who helped Flop from the Ashes are still here. And Brevoort warned us, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Translation, these are their best announcements, and it only gets worse from here. Welcome to X-Men Shadows of Tomorrow, where the name changes, but the mistakes stay the same. Now, I do want to give a quick shout out to the 616 Comics, the sponsor of today's video and the channel. If you're looking for something amazing, they do have this Witchblade number 16 Shikari cover going on sale live tomorrow. You can get 10% off at their site or on their app using the discount code in the video description. There are 3 new creators joining Marvel's X-Men line for the Shadows of Tomorrow era, launching 4 fresh ongoings and miniseries. Inglorious X-Force from writer Tim Seeley and artist Michael Santamaria revives Cable's covert mutant strike team in a brutal assassination mystery. Marvel's teasing a high body count thriller that digs into Cable's fractured memories and thirst for vengeance, calling it the most extreme story in the entire X line, a bloody, no-nonsense return to the team's 90s roots when missions ended in body bags, not moral debates. Psylocke Ninja, a 5-issue miniseries also by Tim Seeley and artist Nico Leone, uncovers a lost chapter from Betsy Braddock's past as the hand's most dangerous assassin. Marvel's promising a fierce showdown between Psylocke and Elektra that explores identity, precision, and purpose in a battle of telepathic power versus lethal skill. Generation X-23 from writer Jody Houser and artist Jacopo Camaghi launches a new assassin saga for Laura Kinney and Gabby. This story dives into brainwashing, memory tampering, and the next evolution of Wolverine's legacy, an inheritance of violence that Laura and Gabby can't seem to escape. And finally, Cyclops, a 5-issue miniseries written by Alex Packnadel with art by Roge Antonio, isolates Scott Snummers in the wilderness as he's hunted by the Reavers, stripped of everything but his instincts. Marvel describes this as a primal test of control and survival, pushing Cyclops to confront his power, his anger, and what's left of his humanity. So those are the creators that are actually new. And to be fair, Tim Seeley is writing the Undeadpool book for Age of Revelation, and he did do that Rogue the Savage Land miniseries at the very beginning, but he hasn't had an ongoing in the X-Men line. I think Alex Packnadel also had a Sentinels miniseries at the very beginning, but for the most part, this is the fresh blood that you're going to get on the X-Men line. And I will freely admit, just looking at the cover of Inglorious X-Force, Cable looks awesome. I like Archangel. I'm not really sure why Helverine is there. How many different knockoffs and versions of Wolverine and his clones can we have starring in comic books these days? Boom Boom, I'm kind of all right with. But that's certainly the book I'm kind of excited for. Even if Tim Seeley doesn't get me really excited about comic books these days, I would like a return to 90s era X-Force, and I think that could be a whole lot of fun, which is definitely an about face for Tom Brevoort, who openly stated when he launched From the Ashes that he didn't want, a mutant murder squad being X-Force. He wanted to change the parameters. Obviously, that didn't work under Jeffrey Thorne. The Psylocke Ninja book actually sounds really cool. That's the version of Psylocke everybody wants, where you have Quanon and Betsy Braddock as one character. But unfortunately, this isn't a status quo change. This sounds like another one of those throwback series, set 20, 30 years ago in continuity. I actually think the solicitation for Cyclops probably has the most intrigue and sounds the most interesting. I like Cyclops being on the run, getting away from the Reavers, and maybe learning something about himself. Unfortunately, Alex Packnadel has just never shown me that he's a competent comic book writer, but at least that one does have a hook that kind of works. The one that really stands out here is probably shouldn't do it is the Generation X-23. How many different Laura Kinney Wolverine Generation X books, X-23 books can you do with this character before you finally admit she's not Wolverine, she's never going to be popular like that, and can't really carry her own series? Also of note in there, if you haven't seen or you're unfamiliar with Michael Santamaria, the artist on Inglorious X-Force, he's fucking amazing. And if you haven't seen him yet, you're going to love his art and it's going to look like $1 million. So while I'm not super excited about the new stuff coming in, I'm going to check out the X-Force book. I'm going to check out the Psylocke book, and I might check out the first issue of Cyclops. I'm not really sure yet. So that's the new blood arriving on the X-Men line for Shadows of Tomorrow, but we do have some things that are kind of new, as it will also feature a wave of returning from the Ashes creators tackling new limited series and relaunches that expand the mutant world in new directions. Rogue, a 5-issue miniseries by Erica Schultz and artist Luigi Zagaria, sends Rogue back to her Brotherhood roots. Marvel's teasing major cracks in her domestic life, with Gambit as past sins resurface, forcing her to question whether redemption ever truly sticks. Magic in Colossus, a 5-issue miniseries from Ashley Allen and Herman Peralta, reunites the Rasputin siblings in a folklore-inspired clash against ancient monsters in Russia. It's a mix of massive action and emotional fallout, as they test whether family loyalty can survive a world that's tearing mutants apart. Storm, Earth's Mightiest Mutant from writer Maria Oyedele and artist Federica Mancine, propels Aurora Monroe into a world-spanning odyssey from meditative rituals to cosmic-scale warfare. Marvel's billing it as a brutal, emotional, and spiritual crucible that redefines Storm as Earth's ultimate guardian in the shadows of Mistress Death. Finally, we have Wade Wilson Deadpool by Benjamin Percy and Jeff Shaw, brings a darker edge to the Merc with a Mouth. Marvel's describing it as a violent psychological descent where Deadpool confronts his most unforgivable sins and discovers something even worse than redemption waiting at the end. So these are a lot of the writers that have been around for quite some time. Erica Schultz was doing all of the Laura Kinney X-23 stuff. Now apparently she's the Rogue writer. We've also got Ashley Allen, the writer from Magic, returning for a Magic and Colossus series. Ben Percy was doing the Deadpool and Wolverine series before that. During the Krakoan era, obviously he was writing Wolverine as well as X-Force. And then we have the writer of Storm returning for Storm, Earth's Mightiest Mutant, or whatever it is. There's really only one book in here that gets me excited, and that would be the Deadpool book. Not because I want more Deadpool in my life. I actually don't. The character is so played out at this point. But if somebody's going to make it work, and he says it's going to be less comedy and more action, Ben Percy can probably do it. And I'm an enormous fan of Jeff Shaw as an artist, so even if it doesn't read great, it will look good. That one to me has some potential. Ben Percy doesn't always hit, but when he writes a cool story, he tends to hit it pretty darn hard. So he's one of those writers that I have a love-hate relationship. Sometimes I love what he's doing, and if I don't, I tend to hate it. Now, as far as Maria Oyedele returning on Storm, I don't know why they're doing this. He hasn't exactly shown himself to be a proficient comic book writer. He has really enormous problems trying to throw any type of levity or comedy within a story, and he tries to do it a lot. I think there are some cultural differences to where he thinks he's writing a joke, or maybe he thinks he's landing a punchline, but it's not really translating on the pages themselves. So I think this is, just continuing down a path of something that hasn't worked and will continue not to work, which is, in many ways, Marvel Comics and Tom Brevoort's modus operandi these days. Just throw a new name on it and continue the mistakes that you're making. I was surprised that they canceled the Magic book from Ashley Allen. Not that it was great, but it was selling. It was successful. And now they're reducing it down to a 5-issue miniseries, throwing Colossus in there. I love Colossus. He's a great character. And I like Herman Peralta a lot as an artist, but I would much rather see Colossus on anything else. He's so badass, he's so cool, and it really feels like they are not utilizing that particular resource very well. Any comic book that has Erica Schultz on the title, I am not going to read. I've taste tested far too many comic books written by Erica at this point to ever believe that she will ever be able to write a halfway decent or even competent comic book story at this point. So I like Rogue, but I wouldn't touch that comic book at all. Now, we do have some returning series evolving their ongoing narratives to reflect the fallout of Age of Revelation. X-Men, written by Jed McKay with art by Tony Daniel, acts as a direct epilogue to the previous era. Expect time-jumping body swaps, the resurgence of the gene terrorist group 3K, and a deeper exploration of fractured mutant identities in a world still struggling to recover. Uncanny X-Men by Gail Simone and David Marquez kicks off a violent interruption during a celebration by returning villain Mutina. A deadly request sparks a chain of events that could permanently alter one of the X-Men's core members as darkness and consequences take center stage. Wolverine from Saladin Ahmed and Martin Kokolo teams Logan with Silver Sable in a Morlock rescue mission beneath the streets. It's a fresh spin on the lone wolf archetype, filled with uneasy alliances, escalating threats, and a reminder that for Wolverine, peace never lasts. I don't think any of them are particularly good. In fact, I would say that Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men is particularly bad, as in one of the worst things she's ever done in her career. She hasn't exactly been lighting the comic book world on fire for the last 15 years, and it does feel like every issue of Uncanny that she releases, you realize that she's never going to get it back. I don't really like the Outliers at all. None of those new characters have really hit. They're all just kind of strange and unwelcome visitors at this point. Obviously, Jed MacKay is the big architect and the guy that's running the Age of Revelation event. He's basically the guy on the marquee at this point. I like his Moon Knight series. I have not enjoyed his X-Men nearly as much, although X-Men Age of Revelation Overture was a very strong comic book. Unfortunately, Amazing X-Men #1 wasn't all that good. In fact, it was quite boring. Hopefully he can do something, but I have a feeling that X-Men 3K are going to be a big deal, and I just don't think that Schwarzenchild is a good name. I don't think he's a good character. I do not care about Animalia at all. I don't particularly like Juggernaut being on the X-Men team. I definitely don't like Magneto being on the X-Men team. And I think they've just gotten so many things wrong that to continue with what Jed MacKay is doing in X-Men is probably stupid, but really, what else are they going to do? There's nobody left for them to hire. Everybody already turned him down. And then Saladin Ahmed, at least it sounds like he's probably dropping the Wendigo Wolverine angle, which was really stupid. But I did not care about the adamantine or the idea that the adamantium was actually, a false metal god or whatever he was trying to set up there. Totally turned me off. I haven't read a Wolverine issue in probably 4 or 5 months at this point because I couldn't take it anymore. But I will freely admit the Martin Kokolo art, very, very good. And probably the only reason to read it. But the stuff that they're continuing on from the Ashes is basically all bad. They probably should have just done another hard reset and hope that they could figure something out. There was a 4th flagship book, Exceptional X-Men from Eve Ewing. Eve Ewing was on the panel at New York Comic Con, but they didn't announce a book. And they certainly didn't announce the return of Exceptional X-Men. I don't expect it to come back. But it sounds like she's probably going to be working on some type of Emma Frost book that nobody will go and read either, because Eve Ewing just isn't a very good writer. Certainly not a good superhero writer. It felt like maybe there was going to be a future there, but that is certainly not panning out at this point. And as Tom Brevoort said, this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I guess part of the rest of it is going to be Eve Ewing doing something with Emma Frost. Hopefully Kitty Pryde won't be there. So that is your Shadows of Tomorrow, at least the first 11 books. We got 3 returning titles, 8 new titles. I definitely want to hear from you guys. Are you excited from Shadows of Tomorrow? Or do they not address any of the real challenges or mistakes that they made? Is this more the same to you guys? Because it certainly feels like more the same to me. Some of you may be asking, why did they have to relaunch everything? Why do they have so many new things? And that's because X-Men under Tom Brevoort has been an enormous failure. I talked about it not too long ago in a video titled, Marvel Already Killed 2/3 of the X-Men comics. You should definitely check that one out and understand why all of this is happening. I do appreciate the time. And remember to keep thinking critical.